Ruby Rose Barrameda Jimenez was born on August 14, 1980. She was the youngest child of Robert and Asuncion Barrameda. According to her sister, beauty queen and actress Rochelle Barrameda, her youngest sister Ruby was simple, always happy, caring, and thoughtful. On August 1, 1999, when Ruby was just 19 years old, she married Manuel Jimenez III, commonly known as Third in La Piñas, Philippines, where Ruby's family comes from. Third Jimenez is a businessman and came from a prominent wealthy family. In their almost 8-year marriage, they had 2 daughters. On January 21, 2007, according to Ruby's sister Rochelle, Ruby and her husband were involved in domestic violence that prompted Ruby to leave her husband. She left along with her 2 daughters. It is alleged that Third Jimenez had a concubine that he was living in with at the time he and Ruby were involved in domestic violence. However, the Jimenez family contradicted this claim, saying it was actually Ruby that had another man. The Barramedas said in an interview on local TV, Third Jimenez really had an affair, and that he had a letter to Ruby. It said it's been a while since he wanted to end their marriage, but because they had children, it's hard. He also said in the letter that he already has another woman. During the separation, Ruby's father-in-law, 67-year-old attorney Manuel Jimenez II, asked Ruby if he could bring his grandchildren to her daughter's wedding. Ruby complied with this with an agreement that he would bring them back at 9 p.m. But 9 p.m. had passed. He still did not return the children. Ruby also called the Jimenezes multiple times, but they never answered. So at 10:30 p.m., Ruby and her family went to the Jimenez's house in BF Homes Parañaque, but never saw them there. They waited until 3 a.m., but still there was no sign of the kids or the Jimenez family. For the Barramedas, it is clear that it was a setup so that Third Jimenez could sneakily take the children away from Ruby. Ruby filed habeas corpus in court against Third Jimenez so that he would finally let her see her children. She also filed provisional custody with a protection order to get her kids back. However, the judge decided to give custody to Third Jimenez. The judge said it was because Ruby left the family dwelling, and that the eldest daughter chooses to be with her father. She also claimed there was an agreement between the parents about this decision. Therefore, Ruby could just visit her children in the Jimenez residence. However, the Barrameda family never believed there was any agreement, and the judge's decision was bizarre. Under Article 213 of the Family Code, no children under 7 years of age shall be separated from their mother unless the court finds compelling reasons to order otherwise. Ruby's eldest daughter was 7 years old, and her youngest was just 3 months old. Ruby was even still breastfeeding her youngest daughter at the time. On March 14, 2007, Ruby mysteriously went missing after leaving her sister's house to visit her children at the Jimenez residence. Ruby's friend called her sister, asking where she was because her 3 cell phones were off. Ruby's sister immediately contacted all of her cell phones, but she could not connect to her too. The Barramedas started to worry. They called the Jimenez family if Ruby was in their house, but they said Ruby never visited the children that day. So in the evening, they went to the police station to report Ruby and her car missing. They looked for Ruby until 4 a.m. They checked many hospitals and went checking on dark, narrow streets, but no Ruby on site. Ruby's family believed that the Jimenezes had something to do with her sudden disappearance. According to them, they never helped them find Ruby. Ruby's disappearance went cold until 2 years later, in May of 2009. A man named Manuel Montero surrendered to the police and told them where Ruby's body was. Montero said he was involved in the murder of Ruby and wanted to turn state witness in exchange for a lesser punishment. He confessed how he and his companions killed and disposed of Ruby's body and who asked them to do it. Montero was a former operations manager at the BSJ Fishing and Trading Incorporated, owned by Lope Jimenez, Third Jimenez's uncle. Montero said he surrendered to police because of fear and conscience. On June 10, 2009, police fished out a steel case at Navotas Fish Port in Manila Bay. Inside the steel case, they found Ruby's body inside a drum filled with concrete. It took more than 2 hours for crime laboratory experts to remove just the first layer of what served as Ruby's tomb. Montero was also there, guiding the team where Ruby's head was so that they would not accidentally hit it, police said. Another couple more hours or so were spent cutting open the blue-colored drum, where the remains of missing Ruby were eventually found, immersed in soggy concrete. Ruby was handcuffed and her feet bound with nylon rope. Her face was covered with cloth. Dental records confirm the body inside the steel case is Ruby Rose Bermida Jimenez. Montero appointed Third Jimenez's father and his brother Lope Jimenez as the masterminds for the murder of Ruby. He also named his accomplices in kidnapping and murdering Ruby Rose as Eric Fernandez, driver of Lope Jimenez, Leonard Spike Descalzo, bodyguard of Third, and Robert Ponce, who also works in BSJ Fishing and Trading Corporation. According to Montero, Lope Jimenez and his brother, attorney Manuel Jimenez II, planned the murder 2 days before she went missing. Montero claimed that on March 12th, 2 days before Ruby went missing, at the conference room in the BSJ compound, he, Lope Jimenez, Robert Ponce, Leonard Spike Descalzo, Eric Fernandez, and Manuel Jimenez II together meticulously planned the murder of Ruby. They end up with an idea to put Ruby inside a drum and seal it well. On March 14, 2007, Robert Ponce, Spike Descalzo, and Eric Fernandez waited for Ruby inside Jimenez's house in BF Homes Paranaque. When Ruby entered the house, she was ambushed by the three. They covered her mouth with a cloth, handcuffed her hands, tied her feet, and put a blindfold on her. They then carried her to the car owned by the Jimenezes. The three men then drove Ruby along with her car, which was driven by Robert Ponce, to a warehouse in Navotas where Montero was waiting. In the warehouse, Montero asked Ruby what she did wrong to the family Jimenez. Ruby answered she did nothing wrong and was crying. After that, they covered her mouth again and left her for a while. Montero said, later in the evening, Spike Descalzo strangled Ruby with a rope. This ends her life. After the murder, the group put Ruby's lifeless body inside a drum and put cement over it. And if that's not enough, the group covered the cement-filled drum with a steel case, which Montero admitted in doing the welding job to seal it. The next day, they put the steel case on a telescopic truck and drove it to Navotas Fishport, where they finally put it on a tugboat to dispose of it in the ocean. After the disposal of Ruby's body, Montero said Lope Jimenez gave each four of them 50,000 pesos as a reward. Ruby's car was later cut into pieces and put on fire along with the rest of her items. Montero said he heard from Lope that Ruby needed to be killed for supposedly causing shame to the family in the custody fight over Ruby and her husband, Third Jimenez's children. On August 24, 2009, the Department of Justice charged all three of the persons implicated by Montero with murder. This includes attorney Manuel Jimenez II, Lope Jimenez, Spike Descalzo, Robert Ponce, and Eric Fernandez. Manuel Montero was also charged with murder. In March 2010, the DOJ ordered the filing of parricide charges against Manuel Jimenez III as a co-conspirator in the crime. However, the charges against Third Jimenez were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Attorney Manuel Jimenez II surrendered to the police and was put on hospital arrest. Robert and Spike were at large for a while, but were later found and arrested. Lope Jimenez and Eric Fernandez remain at large. In the trial, the Jimenez defense team questioned all what they claimed to be flaws in the examination results of the PNP crime lab, saying it is not enough to prove that the body inside the steel case is Ruby. They said the body inside the steel case has a height of 5 foot 6 inches, and Ruby is 5 foot 9 inches. According to the Bermuda's attorney, it is possible the body shrank because it had been in a fetal position with cement over it for more than 2 years. So it is to expect that it would not be the same length as when Ruby was alive, she said. In the dental records of Ruby in 1996, She did not have tooth 14 anymore. But on the body found, there was. The Barramuda's attorney explained Ruby underwent dental braces treatment after removing the tooth 14. So tooth numbers 16 and 15 moved closer together. She said this is also what it says from the crime lab report. Also, Montero's statement that Ruby was strangled with a rope before she was put inside the drum does not match the autopsy report of the body found. They said that the medico-legal report cause of death is asphyxia by suffocation and that there were no signs of ligature marks at the neck. However, the Barramudas has no doubt it is Ruby inside that drum. They positively identified her through her clothes, underwear, and earrings. But then again, Jimenez's defense attorney said they had gathered evidence that Ruby might still be alive. They pointed out a transaction on March 6, 2007, involving a travel agent 8 days before Ruby went missing. The attorney said Ruby probably went to travel. The Barramudas don't believe this at all. I mean, why would Ruby go to travel without her kids? She fought to see and get her kids from her husband and then suddenly decided to travel alone? On May 12, 2013, Montero recanted his testimony in a handwritten statement saying, "The truth is the accused in the case did not commit anything wrong, and they did not have any part in the case. Even I am not involved in the case. That's why my first plea was not guilty," Montero said. He further said that he and the other accused did not throw the drum which contained Ruby's body into the waters off Navitas. According to him, the drum came from Bécourt Cavité and was planted only a few days before. "I was taught to pinpoint the accused." Montero said he was setting the record straight because he was being bothered by his conscience, as he was accusing innocent people. "I hope this statement will mitigate my lies and faults. I ask for forgiveness for all the accused," he added as he stressed that no one forced him to execute the 12-page notice of withdrawal of consent and testimony. The document was signed by Montero, with his wife Irene and their daughter Michelle Ann serving as witnesses. Weeks after, he mysteriously escaped from witness protection in camp in Bagong Diwa on March 20th, 2013. On July 10th, 2019, Malabon Court Branch dismissed the murder case against Manuel Jimenez II, Leonard Spike Descalso, and Robert Ponce after prosecutors failed to establish their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Without Montero's testimony, the Malabon court found no sufficient evidence to convict the three of murder. The discovery of the body of a deceased only proves that a crime has been committed, but it does not include the identities of the persons who committed it or its actual commission by someone, the court said. Aside from the fact that the evidence of corpus delicti is independent from the two extrajudicial confessions made by accused Montero, which were though denied admission by the court as per order dated October 18, 2017, there is dearth of evidence on record that would associate the accused Movens to the criminal agency responsible to the crime committed, it added. In this case, the evidence on record fails to establish probable cause with respect to the accused Moven, the court said. Two other accused, Lope Jimenez and Eric Fernandez, remain at large until now. Despite Montero's disappearance from police custody, Ruby's father is hopeful that Montero will come around, saying, "If you are still alive, we are not sure if you escaped or were allowed to escape. We hope your conscience will convince you to do the right thing." Ruby's mother also said all she's asking for now is a chance to see her late daughter's children. "29-year-old Lisa Michelle Mitchell was the youngest in her family. According to her mother, Peggy Mitchell, Lisa was lively and very extroverted. When she was young, she loved drawing, and she really had the talent for it. Peggy said she started drawing at just 4 years old. Not only that, she had the talent to draw, she can sing well too. When Lisa was in high school, she and her friends formed a girls' singing group called Cuz, C-U-Z, and liked to record themselves singing in front of the camera. After Lisa finished high school, she worked at many grocery stores and coffee shops. She also worked for a mobile snow cone company at one point in her life. where she would sell snow cones at different events, including concerts. Later on, she would meet Alan Schieback at a restaurant in northeast Calgary, where Schieback worked as a sous chef. Not long after that, they became a couple. Peggy said she didn't think the relationship would last since Schieback is an introvert and utterly different from her outgoing daughter. She adds, right at the beginning, Schieback would get upset if Lisa said she wanted to be out there and have fun, because, like I said, he is more of an introvert, but they worked it out. Their relationship is described as an on-again, off-again relationship. At one point, when they were 5 years together, Lisa went home from work and found Schieback had left. He took his belongings, including her guitar. Lisa was heartbroken, but eventually got over Schieback. She moved in with her mother and started dating a new guy. While she and her new boyfriend were on a trip to Toronto, Schieback came to her mother and told her that he wanted Lisa back. He said he was sorry and even showed an engagement ring he had bought for her. A couple weeks later, when Lisa had returned, she and Schieback were back together again. Shortly after that, Lisa gave birth to a little boy. Then just over 2 years later, they had a baby girl. In 2012, after 10 years together, the couple often fights. Peggy said Schieback had trouble keeping jobs and that the fights turned violent. Schieback was working as a cook and sometimes a mechanic. Lisa had 2 jobs. One of her jobs was a waitress every weekend at Twin Cities Hotel and Saloon, located in Longview, Alberta. About an hour's drive south of Calgary, Lisa and Schieback lived in Ogden, Calgary. Her mother, Peggy, also works in the hotel. She was the one who recommended the part-time job to Lisa. Peggy said, "So, I would be there during the day, and Alan would come home from work. And he'd always be, I'm tired. And meanwhile, she's been looking after the kids all day. She's made supper, and all he wants to do is just sit and veg on the couch. He was always too tired to play with the kids, to help her in the kitchen at that time, and then the yelling started a bit. She would just get frustrated because she had to get ready to go to work, and she couldn't do everything." On October 27, 2012, Lisa and Peggy went to a Halloween party at the place they work, the Twin Cities Hotel and Saloon. According to Peggy, they were having so much fun. They partied until 3 a.m., and Lisa ended up sleeping at her house in Longview. The next morning, Lisa left for Calgary earlier than planned after a call from Schieback saying she needed to return their truck because he had to pick something up. After that, Peggy never saw her daughter again. When Lisa missed a November 3rd shift at the hotel, Peggy drove to Ogden, Calgary to investigate her whereabouts. According to her, she knocked on their door and Schieback opened it. She asked him where Lisa was, and he said she took off. She left. Schieback said that he and Lisa were having a discussion on October 29th, Monday, and she had sent him out to go get cigarettes, and when he returned 15 to 20 minutes later, he said she was gone. According to Peggy, she noticed in their front hall closet she saw Lisa's favorite shoes and jacket. She asked Schieback where someone would go without their shoes and coat. Schieback answered, those were her work shoes, and she left without them. Next, Peggy said, she checked the house but found no sign of her daughter. There were a few of her personal things. She didn't see her purse, but she saw a lot of her jewelry that she would typically have on if she left the house. Schieback said he had gotten an email from Lisa the night before that would be the 2nd of November. He suggested Peggy check her inbox when she returned to Longview, which she did. Lisa had said in the email she just had to get away. Peggy was not convinced the note was from her daughter. However, she reluctantly replied and received another message from Lisa's email address. According to Peggy, it said basically that she had to get away, that she had met someone and asked me to go and get her clothes from the house. Peggy said she picked them up and received a note that Lisa would come to Longview the following weekend to pick them up, but she never arrived. She also received a voicemail message in the middle of the night at 2:45 a.m. on November 15th in her daughter's voice. Hey, I'm okay. Sometimes my weekends get crazy, and it was quiet for a while. And then, all of a sudden, this happened, and within half a day, I should, but he's back now, I gotta go. Love you, said the choppy voicemail. Peggy is suspicious about what she described as an out-of-character voicemail from Lisa. It sounded like her, but it wasn't her, Peggy said. She decided to go to the police and report Lisa missing. Constable Carl Sudik, the lead investigator on the case, said they tried to track down Lisa by finding out who she could be talking with and what her lifestyle was. They tracked her banking and looked for information on her phone records. They found out Lisa talked to multiple men. Constable Sudik said she was dating other men at the time, which added another level of complexity trying to find out who she was dating, because some of these people that she was dating and talking to were not in Calgary, which kind of fits the story of her leaving Calgary and going away with someone else that I believe the emails and voicemails said. There was also a cursory search done at Lisa and Scheiback's home, but police found nothing out of the ordinary. The house was clean and organized except for the basement. It was just a bunch of junk piled up, which if you look at half of the basements in Calgary, looked pretty much the same, Constable Sudik said. Calgary Police Homicide Detective Dave Sweet interviewed Scheiback 2 times. The first was an interview with Scheiback detailing a rocky relationship between him and Lisa, including blow-up arguments that included pushing, stints of the two living separately, and anxieties about trust and infidelity. He said he attempted to reconcile during their 10-year relationship, despite his concerns about trust and cheating. "I'm one of 5 potential biological fathers for my son," Scheiback said. He told the detective he was aware Lisa had dating profiles online, and that he'd seen and heard her exchange phone calls and texts with a lot of friends that were guys. Scheiback also states he is the abused one in the relationship. Police continued to investigate Lisa's disappearance and interviewed men with whom Lisa talked. However, there was still no clue where she could be. Then police checked that voicemail Peggy received in the middle of the night. They noticed it was a private number and was one of those pay-as-you-go type phones. Police said the phone was bought in Calgary but registered in Edmonton. Only a few calls were made, 4 to Scheiback and 1 to Peggy Mitchell. Police became suspicious of Scheiback since he told them he had never heard from Lisa except for that email he received in November. When crime analysts checked the location of the caller, they realized it was down the street from Scheiback's house. Police investigated Scheiback's phone records and bank statement to find out what he's been spending his money on. It turned out Scheiback had been doing a bit of shopping in the days following Lisa's disappearance. The bank statement provided police with the stores Scheiback went to and the amount he paid. On November 3, 2012, just days after Lisa went missing, he went shopping for a large plastic tub, cat litter, bleach, gloves, cement, mixing buckets, and a 4x2-foot piece of plywood. Scheiback didn't have a cat, so the cat litter was a red flag for police. Peggy said he was deathly allergic to cats. Police also learned that there was a cash withdrawal from Walmart for $40. Police said Scheiback used this to buy a cell phone from Walmart to contact Peggy. The cell phone cost $39.99 for 1 month of use. Police believe these strange purchases were not normal and dubbed it a burial kit. Somehow, this evidence was not enough to arrest Scheiback, according to police. Scheiback had no clue the police were investigating him. He was living his normal life with his 2 kids. One time, when he was away from work, police sneakily checked his house but found no significant clue again. The house looked normal, police said. Scheiback had pictures of him and the children and Lisa on the walls, and in the basement was the bucket, the plywood, the bleach, the gloves, and a large built-out cement construction in the corner of the basement that was covered in boxes. They didn't move a thing there to not let Scheiback know they were investigating him. The evidence police gathered was not enough. They still needed more evidence. So on December 4th, 2013, a year after Lisa Mitchell disappeared, the Calgary Police Service embarked on Operation Aurora, an undercover investigation involving 83 scenarios where police befriended Scheibach over a 12-month period. They aimed to get a confession from him and used the tactic Mr. Big. This is a tactic where police pretend to have criminal organizations and trigger the suspect to confess to a crime boss, or Mr. Big. On December 4th, 2013, a female officer and male officer tailed Scheibach to a parking lot, and after he left, they drove into his vehicle, causing minor damage. The other male officer left the vehicle, leaving the female officer to wait for Scheibach. Upon his return, the officer told Scheibach that due to poor road conditions, she'd accidentally slid into the side of his vehicle. She said the vehicle she was driving was a company car and that she was hoping to pay for any damages outside of insurance. After a brief exchange of information, including phone numbers and business cards, Scheibach spoke on the phone with the officer's boss, the male officer, and the two agreed to talk again soon. The officer said she'd meet with Scheibach on December 19, 2013, to give him the $1,000, and the two shared a meal. She said he talked about his two children and plans for Christmas. The two kept in contact through text and phone calls. During the operation, Scheibach asked the female officer on a date, and she politely rejected him. On December 5, 2014, more than a year later, Detective Sweet contacted Scheibach by phone while he was with an undercover police officer at a pub in Winnipeg. Detective Sweet informed Scheibach he'd taken over the case as their investigation had led them to believe it was a homicide. The detective told Scheibach he wanted to meet with him to talk, and that he would also need to search his Calgary home because he believed there was information in the house that would help solve Lisa's murder. That part was put almost into a script to introduce the sense of anxiety, said Detective Sweet. Panicked, Scheibach confessed to Mr. Big in exchange for help. He wanted him and his children to flee the country. Scheibach told Mr. Big about him and Lisa's tumultuous relationship. He said the day after the Halloween party in Longview, Lisa arrived home, and they started arguing the whole day. They slept separately, Scheibach slept on the couch, and Lisa slept in their bed. Yeah, she was just actually in a bad mood that whole day. And first thing the next day, it was right back into it, and just kind of kept going and going and going, Scheibach said. He said he didn't even remember what the fight was. He didn't know what was getting everything so heated. All I remember is that we were just arguing, that it was just back and forth the whole day, and I can't even think what it was. I don't know what we were saying to each other. He said they were in the kitchen when Lisa came towards him with a chef's knife and tried to stab him. I don't know now, honestly. Things happened. I wound up trying to hold her back, to hold her down. My hands wound up around her neck. I choked her. I can remember sitting there and trying to let go, and not being able to. I wound up hiding her body and faking some text messages and emails, and stuff from her to her family and stuff saying she left. That night, I cleaned the place top to bottom with bleach and stuff 2 or 3 times afterwards just to be sure. As Scheibach confided in the man he believed to be one of his closest friends, he expressed regret that he'd hidden the body and kept such a heavy secret for more than 2 years. While Scheibach was confessing, police searched his home. They went to the basement and started excavating the tomb-like structure that had been constructed in the corner of the basement. With chisels and hammers, police were able to break it down to the point where they found a large Rubbermaid tub in the cement. They opened it up and found Lisa's body in cat litter and salt. Lisa was put in a Rubbermaid tub in a fetal position. The container was duct taped shut. Scheibach used a door to create a mold around it and then poured the cement over the top of the container, entombing her. From time to time, Scheibach cleaned up the area with bleach and cleaner. He told his children to never go to the basement. Air fresheners were also found all over the house to try to hide any smell. For some time prior to Lisa's disappearance, Scheibach had been tracking her communications by putting a stalkerware on her phone. That's why it was easy for him to create a voicemail to Peggy with Lisa's voice. He patched some recorded calls from Lisa and edited them, then sent it to Peggy so she would not worry anymore about her daughter's sudden disappearance. When Scheibach's laptop was examined, police found a history of online searches from December 2012 about how body decomposition is affected by various things such as salt, lye, concrete, lack of air, and lack of insect activity. Similar searches were done in April and May of 2014, along with queries on murder legislation in Canada. Between August 2013 and March 2014, there were numerous web searches made for the name Lisa Mitchell. Some included the additional search terms Calgary, missing person. There were also searches for adult videos. In the trial, Scheibach testified that Lisa once hit him with a mirror while he was bending down, he said. On another occasion, he testified she slapped him across the head while he was putting their son in a car seat. In April 2012, she attacked him with a skillet, he said. Scheibach said he called police after the skillet attack, but was ordered to leave the family home. An attempt to get an emergency restraining order the next day failed. He said he lived in his truck for 5 months before he managed to get a new home. Scheibach said the relationship was tumultuous, mainly due to financial problems and Lisa's infidelity, despite an attempt at reconciliation beginning in July 2012. The relationship deteriorated again and culminated in a fight on October 30th, 2012, he told court. He said he found himself trapped in a corner when Lisa came towards him with a knife. I'm not sure how, but I know my right hand did close around her neck. I remember I was pushing hard, trying to get out of the corner I was in, and my left hand was trying to push away her right arm. I realized that she was gone, she was not breathing, she's not moving, and I'm trying to tell myself to let go, and it seems to happen in slow motion, Scheibach continued. Scheibach said he didn't call the police because he feared they wouldn't believe him. He started cleaning up and decided to place Lisa's body in a Rubbermaid container. In the process of doing that, it came to me that she wasn't going to get angry again. I really became aware of the fact that she was gone, and I was in a state of full panic. In court, Lisa's mother, Peggy Mitchell, said, Lisa said she was gesturing with a frying pan and accidentally hit him. Their abusive relationship included pushing and shoving from both sides, a situation clearly unhealthy for all family members. On the last day she saw her daughter, Lisa was at her home in Longview. Lisa had brought a male acquaintance over that night. Defense lawyer Balfour Dare would later refer to him as a one-night stand. The next morning, she left for Calgary earlier than planned after a call from Scheibach. She never saw her daughter again. Medical examiner Dr. Jeffrey Gofton testified that by the time he examined Lisa, her body was in a significant state of decomposition. He found the cause of death to be probably manual strangulation, based on fractured thyroid cartilage in Lisa's neck. Dr. Gofton confirmed for defense lawyer Balfour Dare that Lisa's fatal injuries could have been inflicted almost instantly, and her death occurred within seconds. Alan Scheibach was convicted of manslaughter and causing an indignity to Lisa's body. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The Alberta Court of Appeal later increased the term to 10 years. Alan Scheibach was scheduled for statutory release on April 11, 2022, following the completion of 2/3 of his sentence.